following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds worth of sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this April the 28th, 2023. Today's show, as every show, brought to you by Caldera Lab and CalderaLab.com. Use promo code 1420LAB at CalderaLab.com today and save yourself 20% on their men's skincare products today and keep that youthful exuberance in your mug all year long. I've actually seen a friend last night for the first time in quite some time last night, and he said, "Brent, you do look a lot younger." And I don't even think he was being facetious or funny or poking fun. I think he was actually being quite truthful, saying that CalderaLab.com and Caldera Lab products actually work. Remember, we are part of the Belly Up Media Network and part of the Belly Up Media Network group of shows. Be sure to check out Belly Up and Friends on Spotify for all kinds of different sports podcasts, like everything car racing to collect and hockey, baseball, all there at Belly Up and Friends. Thank you very much to Belly Up and Friends, or Belly Up, for having us part of their media network. Anyways, winning is hard. It's a tough thing to do. It's a tough for a franchise to put together a championship, from the players to the fans to the management to the ownership. It's a tough thing to do, and it's harder. It gets harder and harder every year. It gets harder and harder with free agency to put together a championship team. Salary caps can have you have a team that can. It's tough to do. It's tough to piece it all together. Have a group of guys that go in one direction. Make sure that you have the proper pieces put in place, from a goaltender to a defenseman to a quarterback to a starting pitcher to a reliever, a shortstop, whatever you want to have. Winning it's really tough thing to do, and it takes an entire group of people to be pushing in the right direction, the same direction to get it done. You look at the Cleveland Indians, you ask them, they haven't won a world championship since 1948. They've been licking the jar really since 1995. They've had a lot of teams that have been very close. They had World Series appearances in 95, 97, and that 2016 World Series, one of the best World Series in my life. With the Chicago Cubs, that they had that one that they came up short in Game 7. You look at the Boston Red Sox. They finally got theirs in 2004. They had a lot of years where they couldn't get it done, losing to the Yankees year after year in the ALCS. You think that 03 team that was probably poised to win and probably should have won a World Series that year, but the Aaron Boone home run, they kept Pedro Martinez in too long in Game 7 at Yankee Stadium, and Boone hit that home run off of Tim Wakefield in the 11th inning. Mariano came out. You remember that game? I'm going to talk about the Yankees a little bit. Mariano came out, shut the door for 3 innings there. Unprecedented thing. And Boone hit that home run off Wakefield into the Bronx sky and sent the Red Sox home without a world championship that year. 2004, they did win one after being down 3-0. The Dave Roberts stolen base in Game 4, which propelled the Red Sox to get something done, and they went on to win that World Series in 2004 that nobody expected them to win, but they finally got theirs. It's really tough to do. You just don't know when it's going to happen. You look at the 2016 Chicago Cub team that finally won one after 108 years of not having one. And as Harry Carey said, as sure as God has green apples, or made green apples, whoever he said, the Chicago Cubs would win a World Series. And they got their World Series in 2016, one that they probably didn't deserve to win, but that was one of those teams that you didn't think was ever going to win one. They hadn't been in a World Series since God knows when. And you look at the Bartman incident that happened in the Florida Marlins with 95, I think it was, with Al Lou down the line. He was never going to catch that ball. Don't kid yourself. He was never going to catch that ball. Bartman is just a scapegoat. And speaking of goats, the Chicago Cubs is the curse of the Billy Goat that happened, and it never happened. They just didn't get it done for years and years, but they finally got theirs in 2016. And there were people watching. Me and Deanne were laughing about this, how the Leafs, we'll get to the Leafs in half a second, but how people were sitting beside their parents' graves or their grandparents' graves or whatever it might have been, because generations went by without Chicago Cubs fans getting that taste for a World Series, not getting one done. And it's one of those things, you just don't know if your team's ever going to do it. And people fail to realize how hard it actually is to win a world championship. It's such a thing that you just don't know it's going to happen. You go back to the Red Sox not getting their World Series after how many years, the curses and Bambino. In '86 they had their chance against the Mets, and people call it the Buckner play and everything else. It didn't get their World Championship in '86 against the Mets, and it wasn't Buckner. If you watch that game, it had nothing to do with Buckner. That it should have never gotten to Buckner's hands. That ball should never been hit. I think it was Paul Stanley, or not Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley's the lead singer at Kiss. Bob Stanley, who gave up the wild pitch and the walk, 2 walks, and everything else that they didn't get theirs done. And you just wonder how hard it is. Like, if you see that and how hard it is to win a world championship. You got the Yankees, we'll talk about them for half a second. They spend money year after year, and they don't get one every year. Like, you can't just throw money at things and hope it all comes together. You can't just say, we have the pieces, we have the parts, we're going to do this. You look at teams that do end up winning a world championship. We talked about yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the St. Louis Blues, how they got theirs in 2019, kind of a ragtag team that was put together, and then Gloria came across from Laura Branigan and put that team over the hump in 2019, and they got their Stanley Cup. Over the years, you just can't just throw money and hope things come together. There has to be the it factor that gets you that championship eventually, and you just wonder what that it thing is. Nobody's ever been able to put their thumb on it. Nobody's ever been able to say, this is what you need. You get this guy, you get this piece, you get that piece. Well, the Detroit Red Wings found that piece. That was money back when there was no salary cap, but they also had to get a Scotty Bowman in there and tell Steve Yzerman, or ask Steve Yzerman, or suggest Steve Yzerman, this is how we need to do things and change things around a little bit. So maybe that was the X factor, but also spending $100 million and having a bunch of Hall of Famers go there and say, hey, we want to win a Stanley Cup, and going to Detroit was that thing that made that happen. But there's no formula to winning, and that's one of the great things, or the bad things about professional sports, is that you don't have an absolute formula that says this and that, and you'll get yourself a Super Bowl, you'll get yourself a world championship, you'll get yourself a World Series or a Stanley Cup. There's no definite factor that says you are going to do this and you will win. Winning is hard. The National Hockey League has 32 teams who are I don't say all are trying to win a Stanley Cup, but most are. You have the Major League Baseball, you have 30 teams that want to win. No, you don't have 30 teams. You have 15 teams that want to win a World Series in Major League Baseball, and there's no definite factor to how to do it. You have the Tampa Bay Rays, who say, okay, we have the analytics guys, we have this, that, and the other. We spent $70 million. They've never won. And everybody's gushes over them and how they can go out and win year after year and get themselves into the playoffs by spending $70 million, but they haven't won anything either. So there's no definite formula. The Yankees go out and spend $300 million every year. They don't have one since 2009. The Dodgers go out and spend $320 million every year. They don't win. They got the one World Series in 2020, the COVID World Series. Don't even really count that one. And they haven't had a World Series since '88, and they're one of the best franchises for professional sports. The San Diego Padres go out and spend money year after year. They're not having a great season so far. They have never won a World Series. You think about all the teams that never won a championship in their respective leagues. The Padres, the Buffalo Bills, the Buffalo Sabres, the Seattle Mariners have never done anything. The Milwaukee Brewers have been around for a long time. They never won anything. The Bengals, the Browns, the Lions, the Vancouver Canucks, who think they have it figured out. They've been in the Stanley Cup Finals, I think, 3 times. What was it, 82, 94, and 2011? There you go. There's a little history for you guys here at 14:20 in the morning. But it's tough to win a world championship, Stanley Cup. And you got to have a team. You got to have a franchise. You got to have ownership. You have to have management that's all pushing in the same direction. And you don't know what that thing is that doesn't get it done. And the Toronto Maple Leafs have not figured out how to get it done. And I'm going to bash on the Leafs a little bit right now. That game last night, they went up 1-0, and you thought that there was going to be that. Okay, Deanna and I were out and about a little bit last night and watching that game, and you thought, okay, you know what, they're going to get it done. I had the butterflies before the game, and it felt good about that. And they just never, after that first goal, they just kind of just laid back a little bit and didn't get it done. They gave up the tying goal short after that, and just never had any pushback whatsoever, and didn't look like they were invested in that game at all until it was 3-1. They pulled the goalie with, I think, 4 minutes left. They got it to within 3-2, and then it was over, a 4-2 hockey game the way it finished. But they just didn't have that pushback and that it factor that said they're going to win tonight. When you really watch that hockey game, the crowd was into it and everything else, and it just didn't seem like the team was invested into it. Winning's hard, and you have to have everybody invested into winning. I'm not not saying that the Leafs players to a man didn't have it. I'm saying that franchise is just missing something. And if I'm sure if I had that magical formula, they would pay me a lot of money for it. And you just don't know why the Leafs can't put it together. It was a situation last night that they just didn't go for it. They didn't have that eye of the tiger, I guess you want to say. They didn't have that X factor that felt good after it was tied 1-1. You kind of knew that it wasn't going to happen, and they just don't ever get it done. Now they got to go back to Tampa and get it to within and hope to God that they can win it in Tampa. But winning 3 in a row in Tampa is going to be a tough situation. You don't know. I haven't done the research on it. If everybody knows, get back to me. But you just don't know how many teams have won 3 in a row in Tampa or 3 in a row on the road in the playoff series and gotten it done that way. It's a tough road to hoe, and the Leafs just didn't get that thing done last night. It's going to be really tough. You talk about pushback. Last night, Rick Bowness of the Winnipeg Jets, he was disappointed in his team after it was done. They lost in 5. They're out last night. Their playoff aspirations are all done. The Jets just didn't get it done. And Rick Bowness said, we didn't have any pushback. Our team wasn't very good last night or in that game. He had a 1-minute presser after losing out in 5 games. And he flat out called the players out, which you don't hear very often in the world of professional sports, where a coach will go out and say, well, Bowness has been around a long time. So what's he care if he gets fired or anything else? He's not concerned about it. And you just wonder why professional athletes don't have that it factor when it comes to the playoff time. Were the Jets going to win a Stanley Cup this year? Probably not. I picked them to win the Cup back in January, but ever since I picked them, they went downhill. But they didn't have that pushback all season long, and Bowness called his players out. And last night, the Leafs were the exact same team as the Jets were last night, just in a different situation where they were up 3-1 and could boot one. So it didn't much matter to the Leafs, I guess, last night. But they just don't seem to have that player or that guy that was pushing back last night and that will to win in the second period and until late in the third. They just didn't have it last night. And you don't know if they can dig down deep inside and find that victory and find that it and that magical formula. Maybe Caldera Labs has one in their tickle trunk of goodies, and they can douse some fairy dust on the Leafs to get it done in Tampa Bay on Saturday night. But you just can't see it happening. You can't see them winning a game 6 in Tampa. Winning 3 in a row on the road is tough, and I don't think any team's ever done it to come back and win the Stanley Cup. I'll do some research on it tonight, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. But you just don't know if it can happen. They just don't seem to have that guy or that thing. I can't tell you who's going to win game 6. I don't know who's going to win game 6 down in Tampa, but I will tell you who's going to win game 7 right now. If that thing goes back to Toronto for a game 7, Toronto does not win that hockey game. They do not. It's just that Tampa will come out. They will get Vasilevsky, who looked really good last night for the first time in this series. But you just got to think that if the Leafs don't pull it off tomorrow night in Tampa Bay, that they're done. And it's sad to say, but it's one of those things. And you have a different feeling for the Leafs compared to the you have for the Edmonton Oilers going into their playoff game tomorrow in LA, where you have McDavid and you have a Draisaitl, and McDavid seems really driven this year to get something done, and he's been really good all year long. And Draisaitl on the other side has been just a beast. So you feel a lot stronger with an Oilers team up 3-2 than you do have a Leafs team going up 3-2 going on the road. It's just two different feelings of two different franchises right now, because not the Oilers have ever done anything, but at least have won around since 2004. I know these players have nothing to do with the past, really. They have nothing to do with 67. They have nothing to do with 2004. They have nothing to do with not winning around. A lot of these players have not much to do with that and the history. We talk about that. Like a lot of these players, their parents weren't alive in 67, right? So it has nothing to do with these players and the Stanley Cup drought, but winning's hard. I get it. Winning is hard, and why the Leafs can't get it done year in, year out, I have no idea. I just can't see them winning the series. Last night, like I said, Deanna were out and about. We ran into a couple other Leafs fans. One guy had a jersey on, another guy had a T-shirt on, and he didn't have much hope for the Leafs either going into the game 6 and game 7. It's tough being a Leafs fan. It's tough being a sports fan in general if your team doesn't win. I mean, being a Buffalo Bills fan, they had those 3 chances in a row back in the 90s, and they had the chance this year. Everybody had picked them after week 1 to win something, but they didn't get it done. And now I just can't see the Leafs having enough pushback and having that winning pedigree, that it factor, that magical fairy dust that they just don't seem to have. And I don't know what it is and what the factor is for the Leafs to get something done, but it's too bad, because the Leafs Leafs fan base is strong, and the Leafs fan base is very passionate about their team. And like Harry Carey said, as sure as God made green apples, the Chicago Cubs are going to win a World Series, and they did. I just can't see the Leafs winning a Stanley Cup this year or getting past the Tampa Bay Lightning once again. That pushback last night was a bit abysmal. Maybe I'm being pessimistic sports fan guy, but I just can't see the Leafs getting it done. They just didn't have it last night, and I don't see them having it going forward. And it's tough to say, and it's tough to accept that. I hope I'm wrong for my brother-in-law and father-in-law, because they're as passionate as Leafs fans get. But it doesn't look good, and maybe I'll get proven wrong tomorrow night, or maybe in Game 7. But I don't know. It just seems like they just don't have that thing once again, and it's a franchise-wide thing, and nobody knows what that thing is. And if anybody knows what that thing is, please get back to us at 1420 Sports at 1420sports.com, because we're all curious as to how it's going to get done. But anyways, there's my rant for the day, and we'll just keep watching, keep being entertained, and hope and pray, and put our jerseys on, put your Bab socks on, put your Clark socks on, or whatever it is, and cheer for the Leafs wherever you're watching the games in the next coming days. Anyways, on this day in 1985, Fernando Valenzuela set a major league record of 41 shutout innings to start a season. That season, he had 14 complete games for the Dodgers, with 5 shutouts, the 17-10 record overall, a 2.45 ERA in 35 starts over his. What a season that would be. Like you think about those. That many complete games, 14 complete games in a season, unheard of nowadays. You would never get that. Over his major league career, he had 113 complete games, putting win-loss record of 173 and 153. Fernando Mania, if you all remember it well, back in the 80s, it was something else to behold. Guy from Mexico, he came out of nowhere and put together himself a hell of a career. And his longevity and the complete games records and the streaks and it all, it was something to behold. And happy 53rd birthday to Nick Lidstrom, born on this day in 1970. Lidstrom was born in Kreislow, Sweden. Lidstrom went 53rd overall in the 3rd round of the 1989 NHL entry draft to Detroit, where he played for 20 National Hockey League seasons, winning 4 Stanley Cups in 97, 98, 02, and 08. Lidstrom won 7 Norris trophies over his career, one of the top defensemen to ever play the game, 264 goals, 878 assists for 1,142 points in 1,564 career games, and a plus-minus of plus 450 throughout his career. Lidstrom is one of the great all-time players, a steal in the 3rd round, obviously, in 20 years. But do you know why Sweden never win? Too many Swedes. But I shouldn't say it. Anyways, be sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel today. We got a lot of good stuff going on, a lot of great content. All these shows that are on the podcast form are up on YouTube as well. Got a lot going on here at World Headquarters, but make sure you pick up some merch at our merch store. The link will be in the show's notes, and make sure you go to calderalabs.com and use promo code 1420 lab at calderalab.com and get 20% off the men's skincare products today, and keep that youthful exuberance in your mug all year long, like mine is now, smiling here on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks everybody for listening to our show. Subscribe to it wherever it is, get the updates and everything else, but make sure you talk to people about our show, because that's how it gets out there more. I can put everything I want on Facebook and Twitter and everything else, but it's the word of mouth about the show that gets out there, and that's how people get to hear my glorious voice on a daily basis and everything else. But anyways, thank you very much for listening to the show. We appreciate all the support you've given us over the 2 3/4 years we've been doing this, and we appreciate all the feedback that we get, positive or negative. It's always more positive than negative. I don't even read the negative stuff anymore. It's all positive here at 1420 World Headquarters. Thank you very much for listening to the show, and remember, it doesn't matter where you are, it's who you're with. Have a good weekend, folks. We'll talk to you later.
You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.